Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me on Carroll PMC's video interview series. Today, I am excited to have you with me as we discuss another's journey through medicine. Today, I have two great guests for you all. Dr. Char and Tim McInnis, Carroll College alumni and parents of 3 former Carroll College students. Char is a pediatrician and Tim is an ophthalmologist. Char and Tim founded the nonprofit Montana Outreach Clinic and organized mission trips to Santa Maria del Mexicano Orphanage in Colón, Querétaro, Mexico, in conjunction with the Carroll Global Education program. Within this clinic, Char and Tim's team perform general wellness checks, fluoride treatment, and other medical services as necessary to provide ongoing care to the children and their surrounding community. So let's jump right in and say hello to Char and Tim. Dr. McInnis and Dr. McInnis, welcome to Carroll PMC's video interview series. It is great to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us and asking us.
You can call us Char and Tim.
Yeah, so when did you both realize you wanted to become physicians?
You can go first.
Somewhat late in college. I ended up at Carroll for other reasons because of family history and proximity, and was in both engineering and biology to begin with, and realized I couldn't handle both. Had to pick one. I liked them both. Picked biology because Carroll had a strong history, and never saw a reason to look in the rearview mirror. It was challenging, it was interesting. And then you figure out about late sophomore, junior year, what am I going to do with this? Well, of course, everybody is anticipating med school. And again, I had no reason to look in the rearview mirror and think of doing anything else. So it's nothing I really thought of. It kind of just happened to me.
So I thought about it a little bit more. I think I actually was in a different major. Back in those days, one of the majors was what's called combined sciences of chemistry and biology. And so I was kind of headed towards ancillary medical career like medical technology. I also started in engineering calc and engineering, and then kind of went into the biology. When I was a June, so I was still in this combined sciences degree, not zoology or not biology per se, which was more of the classical pre-med degree. And I had made friends with one of the professors there, and who really encouraged me to go on to look more at medicine. He didn't think I was going to be satisfied or fulfilled with medical technology, and so I started looking into that also late in my junior year, and then went on to that. I ended up taking the MCAT between my junior and senior year and applying. So kind of had both things in mind for quite a while, but then my junior year really thought seriously about medicine and decided to go that direction.
You guys both alluded to something that I'm curious about just back then, if this was still happening. So we are known for our consistent 85% acceptance rate to medical schools. Was a pre-med or medicine emphasis notable at Carroll back then as well, just as strongly as it is today?
I'd say if not even stronger. It just kind of was in the same sentence. Carroll didn't have as many degrees, certainly didn't have graduate degrees. You know, the athletic facilities were totally different. They had, yes. So the answer is yes.
I think very much so. Pure health sciences. At that point in time, like Tim said, there were much fewer degrees. Many fewer of our friends went into like postgraduate schools like chemistry and biology than they do now. It was pretty much medicine or, I don't know, dental hygiene, med tech, or nursing.
But we're dating ourselves. Carroll didn't even have a computer science degree back then.
Right.
If you had, I got a math degree because I had so many computer classes, but it's just the times were different.
Yeah.
It's incredible because computer science now, I mean, that is pretty much that is a huge, strong emphasis and popular major here at Carroll just because of where technology is going.
Sure.
So that's incredible to see that emphasis and focus was still on medicine back then as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
even then, I mean, for 30 years prior to us, there were, older docs coming back and having been trained there. So it's been going on a long, long time.
Yeah, historically in Montana, if you wanted to go into medicine, you went to Carroll. And I ended up at Carroll kind of for other reasons, as did Char, but they had a great program. We both ended up in that.
That's incredible. I love the rich history of medicine that flows through Carroll. And speaking more onto that, how was your undergraduate experience? Are there any experiences in particular that stick out in your memory? And did Carroll help to certify? Or I suppose you answered. Did Carroll certify to pursue medicine or not? But any particular experiences really certify that desire to go into medicine?
Gosh, we didn't have the emphasis to do a lot of training with docs and we just didn't have that. All we had was classes. I mean, we spent very little time in hospitals or clinics. I had the benefit of being from a small town and shadowing an old GP that was a good friend of the family. And so I did a fair amount of that, and I worked at the small hospital, but that just wasn't an emphasis. So, if you were pre-med, it was kind of just because you wanted to be. I guess there was not a huge emphasis. There just wasn't the emphasis now of spending hours, shadowing, and which I think is good, but there just wasn't that then to solidify any so there wasn't any of those experiences for us that really said, oh, I really want to do this.
Yeah, my sole connection to medicine had been that I'd had a broken leg and I'd had infections and I'd been to the doctor myself as a kid. We had I had no idea what being a doctor was really like from their perspective. Like Char said, never shadowed. I was in pre-med simply because I was in zoology and I was in embryology and I was in genetics. And what'd you do with those degrees? And again, I didn't have reason to look back because they were very interesting and very challenging. But my first exposure to medicine was, not even first day of med school, because there again, it was just, well, we did have some clinical stuff first year of med school. That was really the first time I ever shadowed a doctor. And I passed out on my first day. Almost.
So is that somewhat of, I guess it wasn't at Carroll, but that might have been somewhat of a significant experience to, I don't know if it swayed you or dissuaded you away from medicine, but.
What scared me, the first clinical thing I ever did in Bozeman at the WWAMI program was shadow a family practitioner, and he was treating a burn patient. And I got very vagal the first it was like, oh my gosh, am I cut out for this?
Yeah,
turned out okay. But first time I ever saw somebody else's blood, or whatever.
Which, yeah, I used to have a fear of blood in high school, and I eventually got over it with prolonged exposure to blood. But I mean, I think that's a popular debate, at least among us. A lot of pre-meds nowadays wonder, why do we need to get all of these experiences, all this shadowing, all this clinical experience, all this non-clinical experience too? It almost seems like we're going through a checklist, but that also gives us the ability to really certify if medicine is for ourselves. It can be very overwhelming though. So, and I think Char, you alluded to your answer to this, but do you think it's good to now have these multiple almost requirements to really get even considered by medical schools?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think maybe the actual number of hours is probably a little exaggerated for what needs to be. But, I guess I can say in my med school class, I don't remember we had one person drop out of our med school class that I know of, but she dropped out because she really wanted to she already had a PhD and wanted to be a lab scientist and was an older graduate and decided that she didn't want to add the MD to her name, which is basically the only thing she wanted to do, was in it in the first place. But I can think of no one else that got through or went through and said, oh, I don't really want to I decided, this isn't what I thought it was. So I guess I don't know that there's huge advantages to doing, 500 shadowing hours or whatever it is. And I've been on the other side of it, you know, trying to get kids into my clinic on the other side, trying to get students in. And it's a tough thing as a primary care doc because it does slow you down a little bit having a student. And we get so many requests, you know, if you're in Bozeman, which we practice, you know, you have the first year medical students. Now they're, you know, wanting more and more second, third year. You get PA and NP students who need experience. And then, you know, to have pre-med students who want to walk along. So, and now with all the HIPAA requirements, you know, it's a difficult thing to, I've been on the other side trying to do my best to say yes to students, understand, because our 3 kids have had to go through that, and understanding that you guys need the hours, but you know, it's a tough thing to get done. So I guess I have mixed emotions about the number of hours that med schools want you to put in.
That, and Char mentioned the HIPAA type requirements, which are just, I understand them, but they are onerous. And, you know, it used to be somebody'd call your office and say, Dr. McInnis, can I shadow you tomorrow? Or can I come sit in the OR while you operate? You'd say, sure, meet me at 7:15. And that, you know, they'd come in. They didn't have all the paperwork and all, you know, and they respected privacy. They didn't go out and say, I saw, you know, Joe Doe getting surgery. I don't think they did. It never came back to, you know, just, but that's onerous.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I feel somewhere in between with the process too. I mean, I have no choice really because it's just what you got to do now. But some of the experiences I've had shadowing and in my clinical experiences has helped me be able to at least voice through experiences and then the passion that I use to get into those experiences why I believe medicine is right for me. And I was one of those late bloomers. At graduating high school, I was like, oh, you know what? Medicine might be something. I might consider myself a doctor in the future. And I had to use those experiences to sort of define that for me. I think so long as you can vocalize, though, that you are passionate about the field from some form of experience, which doesn't have to be shadowing, doesn't have to be clinical experience, you can still truly answer that question without having regret or too much regret in the future, as is what I think a lot of medical schools are worried about when they impose you need to get shadowing, you need to get experience to really certify that this is for you.
I had 0 hours of experience, and despite that, I think I had a fulfilling and rewarding and, you know, good medical practice.
Yes, it's quite a debate for sure, but for some reason it drew you both to it, and that's where I want to get into next. I feel like a lot of doctor relationships, or people think that you get into medical school and you cannot have relationships, and actually you two became in a relationship as both doctors. So what does a doctor-doctor relationship look like? What are the costs and benefits of that?
So, you know, our time period was, we started dating our senior year when both of us had already applied and actually done our interviews, and we're getting some acceptances back. And so I chose to go to University of Washington, and eventually Tim did too. And, you know, so we were both admitted to the same school and got married after our first year of med school. So, I mean, I would say we had a fairly painless trip into medical school as a couple, I think. I mean, because we were already in that process. We didn't have the stress of, you know, already dating and interview and trying to decide where to apply and everything else like that. And then as far as residency, there is something called the couples match because there are enough people together in med school that you can match to your highest ranking residencies together. We were outside that match because Tim matched in ophthalmology, and they're outside the regular match. So Tim matched early, and then I had already interviewed and was able to call the place he matched, which was Denver, and say, hey, my husband matched early, and they took me outside the match. So
we had the benefit of having kind of my residency was 4 years, Char's was 3 because she was in pediatrics. So once I matched, like she said, she could go to them, but they had the ability to say, we'll put you in our roster now for next year. So it gave quite a bit of flexibility to us, because by then we had our first child too.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think it can be done. It's not without, I mean, now we can look back and say, oh, that wasn't too bad, but I'm sure we were both fairly stressed in the meantime.
That's because it's 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was 30 years ago, but we were fairly stressed. And then as far as coming back to, we both knew we wanted to come back to Montana, both of you Montana kids. And so we just looked at about, most larger towns in Montana that could accommodate both the pediatrician and ophthalmologist, and interviewed at those places and decide. Luckily, there were some towns that could accommodate both. So, I mean, that being said, we knowingly picked specialties. We both picked specialties. We knew we could come back to Montana. We knew so, I mean, that enters in, if that's going to be your life choice, and, being together is your life choice, you pick things that, is accessible and, you can do together. I mean, Tim didn't go into neurosurgery for 8 years because he knew I probably wasn't going to tolerate that. And I didn't go into pediatric ER medicine because I knew there wasn't a special, and a place for that in Montana. So you make those choices.
Right. And it sounds like you guys, I mean, at least as fellow providers, at least you knew what each other's requirements were, and you had some sense of the pathway that each of you were on. And so you were probably able to foster really good team dynamics. But another question comes from a lot of our members and a lot of pre-meds in general is if a pre-med or a medical student or a resident or even a doctor dating someone who is not in medicine, what do you guys think, just as far as that type of relationship?
I mean, I don't think it's easy. Tim has had the experience. He has a brother in medicine who, had one marriage fail in medical school, probably, secondary. I mean, and I think a large component of it was, the spouse didn't understand the obligations and the rigorousness of medical school and had really nothing in common. So I think it's a plus minus relate. I mean, we were both in medicine and we knew what both were going through. We knew how hard it was, and that was a benefit. And that was, so.
I would say it'd be very challenging to, have your significant other expecting to go out on Friday night or spend all day Saturday in the park or whatever. And for you to say, can't, got a big test, got a new quiz, got a, whatever, anatomy dissection. Whereas Char and I never had to ask, what are you doing Friday night? Well, doing the same thing you are. I'm studying for the ortho test next week or whatever. So made it a lot easier for us. I think it would be very challenging for people who are with somebody who's not at all in medicine.
Well, especially not tolerant. I mean, our son is married to someone who's not, works at a hospital. And so she understands. But so I think that the biggest challenge just comes because when there's huge differences in educational levels or, and just, I think you just have to have that tolerance. You have to know and be with somebody who knows this is going to be a significant portion of my life. And so, because I don't think if you're not, a lot of people don't understand how much time medicine takes out of your life.
Yeah, and it certainly didn't stop in medical school or residency. Even in your career, we were forever with kids juggling who's on call tonight, who can pick kids up at daycare, who's available to go to grandparents with or without, with the kids for Christmas. How can we tag team? Because I got to come back to be on call. We were on call. Obviously, I was not near as busy as Char. When Char was on call, she was at the hospital all night. When I was on call, I was hoping my pager didn't go off. But you still had to be there and you still had to be available. And when the kids were younger, you couldn't take call the same night because you didn't have anybody to supervise them. And when they got older, you couldn't be on call the same night because kids had sports activities and you wanted at least one parent to be available to do that. So it was a lot of juggling.
Yeah, I have no way of knowing just the amount of work that's ahead of me and ahead of just in general, medical students and those challenges that come along the way as far as personal relationships, even to family too. This extends even to familial relationships. And I've met physicians and asked them this particular question too, and a few of them who are married to people who are not in medicine, and their responses are a lot about communication, a lot about establishing things up on the table, making sure everyone is aware of what's going on, and the capacity to change. And with that, they've seen some bumps along the road, but overall, I mean, they're still together, which is about the best marker of success you could have in a marriage.
Yeah,
So,
the trouble is, you fall in love with somebody, and then, that's too late. By then you're in love. Now what do we do? Are you a tolerant person? Can you understand? I mean, then it's difficult.
oh yeah, love is a difficult thing. So what experiences beckon you to pediatrics, Char, and then what experiences beckon you to ophthalmology, Tim?
So I think I knew I wanted to do some branch of pediatric care or primary care going into medical school, or I thought I did. And some of the other branches of primary care didn't appeal to me as much with adults. I just realized I was better at working with kids than adults and older adults. Not to say I don't like them, it's just that I just like the medicine of kids. Kids often get very sick, but they often get better. They have a higher chance of being well, and you can do things with kids that you may not be able to do things with adults. And kids don't tend to come in with 30-pack year histories of cigarettes and lung cancer. And so I realized from an early stage that I did better with kids and the diseases and the medicine that you provide to kids than adults. And so knowing I wanted to do primary care, that's kind of the area I headed. I really enjoyed my rotations at Children's Hospital in Seattle. I just was drawn to children's, and didn't enjoy time at the VA or things like at the Veterans Administration Hospital, and just so that's my primary reasons. And I in general really liked the pediatricians that I work with. I mean, I think you have to look at the medicines you're going to be doing, the other docs that you're going to be working with, and sort of what their personalities, because certain specialties definitely draw certain personality people.
My answer is going to sound strange. You're going to think I'm really a passive guy, because just like I ended up in medical school sort of by default because I went to Carroll and was in pre-med, I sort of ended up in ophthalmology somewhat by default. I actually applied for residency in ophthalmology before I'd ever done a rotation, because I was getting along in my junior year. I'd done all these other things I thought I might like to do, and for one reason or another, I didn't like them like I thought I would, either because of the personalities that were involved or the time schedule that was involved, knowing I was married to another physician. And ophthalmology, when I kind of finally started writing off all these other specialties, thought I wanted to do something that was a surgical specialty or branch because I like working with my hands. Ophthalmology afforded me the ability to work with newborns up to 100-year-olds. It gave me the ability to work with men and women. It gave me the ability to work with amazing technology that was kind of just coming out in terms of lasers and, that sort of thing. The biggest disease in ophthalmology is something you can cure in the matter of what used to be an hour, and now is a matter of 15 minutes. You can make somebody who was completely blind see again. And the success ratio, even back then, implants for intraocular lenses had already been developed, and newer technology for ultrasound. And so it was really a stimulating field from a technology and medicine and social aspect, that it gave me, things that worked well for me. And luckily, when I did the rotation, I thought, yes, this is something, I would like.
And it's crazy because you guys both kind of took two different paths and different realizations to get to those specialties, and yet it was all throughout the same thing. It was all throughout medical school. So do you see perhaps maybe the most difficult part of your journey through medical school and through residency, as certifying that that's something, that specialty is what you want to do for the rest of your life? Or was it maybe a difficult thing in medical school?
It wasn't difficult for me. It's another area where things have changed a lot. We have a son that's now an ophthalmologist and a daughter going through medical school. And there have been a huge change, as you guys probably already know. I mean, our full first 2 years were basic sciences, and then our third and fourth year were clinical rotations. And I don't remember the pressure to decide very early on what you wanted to do. And it seems like now that pressure is being bumped further and further earlier in medical school, you know, as, oh, you got to do research in your area you want to go into. Well, you got to do, you know, you got to do your rotation so early. And like Tim said, you know, I think he did his ophthalmology rotation, went in the fall of his third year or something like that. And that would be,
No, it was
or your fourth year.
Yeah.
Your fall, yeah. Which would be unheard of now, you know? And so I feel like, and I personally don't think that's a good thing, because we pretty much kept our options both of us kept our options pretty wide open, as did most of our friends. You know, there were a few of our friends that said family med all the way through. But I mean, there just wasn't this pressure to decide very early on, do all this research, because I think that's where you could probably get into, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, you know, but now I've already got orthopedic research, so I better keep going down that path. And, you know, so I just think that that's a pressure, and I don't remember having on us.
Yeah.
Colin has said that would have been impossible for him to have decided on ophthalmology the way Tim did at this point in time.
Yeah. I had the reverse pressure. I was getting so far along in my career and I hadn't decided what I was going to apply, and I was getting totally nervous that I'm going to be a flunky. I'm going to, you know, do whatever for a year. But I couldn't have done it any other way, you know. I thought, geez, family medicine has appeal to me for many of the same reasons. Back then, family medicine people could do surgery and OB and, you know, but then I did family medicine, and for a number of reasons, I don't want to, and I just didn't like it. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't have decided had I not been able to do these rotations and say, for whatever reason, no, this isn't really for me.
So I would say, if possible, try to do that. I mean, you don't know what you're going to like. You don't know the people that are going to be in it. And 6 months or 3 months of doing research with some orthopod in a lab or some eye person is not going to make you say, oh, I really want to do this. It might steer you that direction, but, you know, keep your options wide open, because there are so many of our friends who sort of thought they were going to do this and end up to be this. And I was a whammy medical preceptor for first years for a long time. And I'd always ask them what they thought they were going to do. And, you know, I would say, you know, 80% of the time, you know, following them through their career, that's not what they eventually decided, thank goodness. But try to keep your options open if at all possible. I know there is pressure to decide early, but there's a lot of benefits in going into it and saying, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think you guys speak to how powerful the third and fourth year clinical rotations are on someone's decision, or at least that's what everyone says. It's the third and fourth year where you really discern what specialty you're really interested in, because you actually get to do that specialty. And a lot of the medical schools I'm applying to currently are really promoting how they're getting you into rotations with patients early on. Mm-hmm. And I think that might help. I don't know if that's imposing to choose a specialty right away. I think that's sort of getting people around patients, and figuring out, hey, this is what I want to do, and maybe getting a sense of what would I like to be doing to this person if they come to me? What sort of illness would I like them coming?
Yeah, I certainly concur with the attempts to get students into the clinical rotation bedside much earlier. Char alluded to the fact that in the past, you know, it wasn't until we had some rudimentary follow a doc an hour or afternoon a week, but it was assigned to you and you didn't rotate. So I agree with getting into the clinic earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the biggest innovation that you guys see happening in both of your respective fields currently?
Well, again, we're dating ourselves. They didn't have computer science at Carroll, and obviously there was no such thing as an electronic medical record. And in the long run, when all the kinks get wired out and the technology works like it's supposed to, and all the systems are interoperable, and I could make a longer list, EMR is obviously a very strong and useful tool, both from the clinician standpoint, as well as from the patient standpoint, as well as from the public health standpoint. There's so many potential advantages. The trouble is implementing that has been very expensive, very difficult, very frustrating. And I feel poorly for, I'm far enough along that I didn't really have to deal with those headaches that my kids now in medical school or in practice are dealing with or going to have to deal with. And when the kinks all kind of get ironed out, it will be a very big innovation. And obviously that doesn't affect just ophthalmology, it affects medicine as a whole. To have records available instantaneously and no past ocular histories and medical histories. And
Yeah, I think that's true, the ability to do that. I would also say two things. Probably telemedicine and that has to do with the EHR. And that's come along so much in the past year or two. As a pediatrician in Montana, we struggled a lot with no specialties, and so I can remember nights thinking a kid had a congenital heart disease and we could do an echo there, but then we had to take the little videotape out of the machine and send it to Denver. And it's like, so you basically had to put a kid on an airplane if you thought it was a critical heart disease, not knowing that. And now you can send it over the telephone and the guys can sit there, the cardiologist sits there and reads it real time, in Salt Lake or Denver, and what you need to do right away. So that advantage, just the computerization in medicine. I guess the other thing in pediatrics is just vaccinations. Even when I was in residency, I had docs that were not even 10 years older than me saying, their ICUs used to be filled with kids with Haemophilus influenza, meningitis, and then, streptococcal disease that we didn't even see. We might see one a year, and things like, even measles, mumps, rubella, even though I know we still have outbreaks here and there are a lot of young pediatricians who have never seen a case of measles, so things like that, that we didn't even think about in pediatrics before, or that took up so much of, previous docs' careers. And now we have people that have never seen those sorts of things.
If there's going to be one good thing that comes out of COVID, it ties into what Char talks about, is this telemedicine, that obviously the platforms and technology and that to be able to conduct interviews, be able to conduct examinations, it's changed in the last 9 months.
Right.
And in the long run, COVID will have been a stimulus in some degree to really push that along much more quickly than it might have happened otherwise. Like the instrumentation of EHR, the telemedicine is going to have a lot of hiccups along the way of, costs and how do docs get reimbursed for it, and how do you actually do an exam telemedicine? How do I look in the back of somebody's eye, I don't know how that's going to work. Or you're going to have cameras built into your computer that can actually look at the retina. How do you measure eye? So there's going to be hiccups, but in the long run, that's going to be good for medicine to get people access to care.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more about telemedicine. It's something that that's coming up a lot in a lot of medical school interview questions. They're speaking about just the impact and power of telemedicine. And it's something that I've read a ton of journals about in the AMA Journal of Ethics, in which they discuss how to approach it now as a physician, where it's really been forced on providers with the pandemic going on. And it's something that right now it's a lot of guidance along with how to work with it. But yeah, I would look forward to a future where it is a viable option, it's effective, and it's something that's standardized and it's got a system built around it to where it can be really effective and implemented for consults that can be done not in person. There's going to be things that need to be done in person, like emergency care, but it's something that could probably that could work. I think it's promising. I think COVID's highlighted it. I completely agree with you. And so let's move into what you guys are most known for at Carroll, possibly. It's the Montana Outreach Clinic and the Medicine in Mexico Global Health Experience. What inspired you guys to begin this clinic, and could you speak a little bit to what it's about?
So when our daughter was a sophomore at Carroll in the biology program, she asked us about any desire to consider a mission trip, mainly for biology students. You know, she just said, you know, there's nursing trips to Africa or India. There's, there's all these different trips for different majors, but there's really nothing for biology students. So I had heard that, and then I had also known how difficult it is to get kids into my own clinic. You know, I couldn't do it. I had gotten pretty much shut down because we belonged to a big organization that just didn't allow me to have, pre-med students in my office. And so I knew from my standpoint how tough it was to let students in to shadow me. And so it started out of a desire for those two things. She was in the Engineers Without Borders Club at Carroll and knew of the school down in Mexico that they had been to for 10 years doing some projects down there, and put me in touch with the priest down there who was running it at the time. And we did some emailing back and forth, culminated with Tim and I and our two daughters going down there one January just to kind of do an exploratory trip and see what it was about. Met the kids, the priest, made some good connections, and decided that this was a viable option. There, it's a school of 200 kids that about 100 anywhere from kindergarten through 18, and that's residential. And and they could get emergency charity care through a local hospital, but they were really lacking in sort of ongoing care of sort of some of their chronic conditions, and just someone to watch, making sure the priests who run the school were really concerned about their nutrition and their development, and just addressing their ongoing problems. And so having made those connections, we decided this was a good thing to try. And oops.
Yeah, I'm sharing some photos along the way.
Okay. Sorry. And so we decided that it was a viable thing. We went in May. We went with our first class of 6 students, as well as a Carroll adjunct professor. And we've been going, that was 2014. And until this coming January, we've been going every 6 to 12 months with groups of 6 Carroll kids, as well as a Carroll professor. Several times it's been Dr. Strode. We've also taken Dr. Gretsch. Cherie was a person from the international travel department. So we've developed some good contacts down there. Unfortunately, we're not able to go in January due to the COVID problem, which students probably already know, but we hope to continue going. The last several trips we've taken some friends of ours, Cindy Jones Hollenbaugh. Cindy's an alumni of Carroll, and their son, Eric, is a bio person who graduated just this last a year ago. It was applying for med school. At any rate, Cindy's a pediatrician and Darren's a cardiologist that we knew through medical school also. So we took that husband and wife pair with us the last 2 times. So there's usually anywhere from 3 to 4 of us docs and 6 Carroll kids. we've really enjoyed doing it. It's a great way for us to give back to kids that don't have a lot. It's a wonderful, I think, a good opportunity for students to get at least some shadowing experience with us. Tim does eye exams, Cindy and I do general care, and Darren has taken over a lot more of the adult care. And so we hope to continue it after this blip in the road of this January. I've been talking to Father Jeremy, and we have all, you know, we have meaning. We would want to continue next January.
Yeah, the trip for me, and for all the people who went last year, just talking to them in reflection, was great. It was very, very informative of both, and very certifying of both my desire to enter medicine, and also just exactly how I want to do it, how I would like to address some of the healthcare disparities that are occurring, both globally and also nationally as well, because I saw a lot of linkage between what's happening in rural Jefferson County, the county that we serve, as part of the ambulance service I'm a part of, and some of the disparities that are happening as far as access goes to the children of Santa Maria and to the people in the surrounding community. And I had a realization from the trip that sort of pertains as well to my EMT profession also, and also just the way I identify as a college student, because I think as college students, we are very focused on output, and I certainly am. Turning in the next paper, the next exam, transporting the next patient, etc. I'm used to results being tangible. And what Medicine in Mexico showed me was that sometimes there lacks a practical difference that a health professional makes. And instead, this difference is made in a much more subtle and personal way. And I'm curious if you can elaborate on the soft skills of medicine and the value of the message, someone cares about you.
Go ahead.
You know, obviously, having been to Mexico a number of times, and then myself having led teams to Guatemala a number of times on ophthalmology trips, you know, it's a terrible misfortune of one more misfortune of the COVID thing is all these trips worldwide, which are thousands a year of people in more developed, rich countries being able to extend a hand to people in less developed countries. It was, you know, with difficult heart that, you know, you write to Mexico and say, we're not coming this year. And I write to Guatemala and say, not only did I have to cancel my trip last April, I'm not planning to come this April. So there's going to be a 3-year hiatus of our presence there. And, you know, where the rubber hits the road is every year you're taking care of lots of blind people, lots of sick people who have no access to care. And so I'm kind of coming in at an angle on this warmth of the compassion and the concern of not just their current health, but the fact that, you know, you can't even reach out now to them because of COVID. And that, you know, this too will pass. But when you're in places like that, when the person you take care of, you know, grabs your hand and kisses you or gives you a hug, you experienced it at the Meal for the Poor, you know, in town in Mexico last year. After the mass, you line people up and you feed them lunch, and then you say, anybody who wants to see a doctor, sit over here. There's a whole bunch of people you're not going to do anything for in actuality, because we don't have the tools, we don't have, what are you doing for them? You're touching them, you're giving them 5 minutes of your time, and you've seen how appreciative they are standing up from the chair knowing they're no better physically than they were 5 minutes ago. But to reach out and grab you, hug you, say thank you, get tears in their eyes, you know, that's valuable to them and obviously valuable to us.
I think that in Tim said, the valuable to us, this is a big deal. I mean, we make a point in Mexico that, you know, we may not change the lives of these 200 kids, the long-term outcome of these, you know, but we're trying to provide a continuity of care to them, that come back and say, hey, we're here. And we try to emphasize to the med student or to the pre-med students that, you know, it's you're not rescuing them from anything. You know, they are giving you a good experience too. You are getting an experience here that you will not get elsewhere. And I think that's to me, that's been part of it. Yeah, they're not getting healthcare this year, but there's 6 Carroll students too that are not getting that experience of, you know, yeah, I made a difference in this person's life today, or, you know, just that feel good like you got from them, you know, the feel good that, oh, I'm glad I'm here and I'm, you know, I'm a friend of this kid today, you know, I'm a friend today. And 6 Carroll students are not going to get that in January. And that's not, you know, they're not getting medical care, but we are not getting that experience either.
The kids there, or the patients in Guatemala, take home that feeling, because obviously even the ones in Mexico last year that we think we're going to save, we identify somebody with an eye problem, we identify somebody with a heart problem, you go to a lot of effort to try to get it fixed and get them into specialists, and 6 months later you find out the parents took them out of the facility, took them back home, the kid never got the care. So what can we really offer is that 1 week of extra attention that somebody from the States, wherever, came here to try to help me.
Yeah, I a lot of those moments, a lot of the most impactful moments were truly during that trip were truly just moments for speaking to the child, showing that someone from the US cares about them, which is something I never even conceptualized, how just the nation that I am from could help in a way impact the care that I was delivering, or at least the attention that I was giving. But in general, it was just the human to human reaction. I think we spoke about something like the laying down of the hands, like the laying of the hands. And it was like providing a hug, providing a sense that's, we are here for you. It provided a lot of moments.
You know, not trying to get into politics, but especially the last several years, to have people come down and say, oh, what we see on TV is not this. What we see on TV is, you know, again, I don't want to get into politics of walls and that, but that was an extra barrier that, you know, that hopefully we tried to help break down.
Yes, definitely. And just before we get to the last question, alluding back to something that you were alluding to, Tim, about this care that you guys have been providing for years now, that is going to be cut and not going to be ongoing now because of the pandemic. Why is it so important for patients to have access to ongoing health care?
Well, Char is a primary, I mean, well, I guess myself too, obviously, it's a whole lot easier to take care of a cataract before the person is completely blind. You know, in Guatemala, they wait so long, not out of desire, but because of poverty, ignorance, being afraid, number of reasons. They present at the last minute. And whether it's a heart disease, it's no longer treatable with medicines, that now requires a major surgery or a transplant, or is not treatable, or because their eye problem started as a simple cataract and now has led to an advanced cataract with associated glaucoma, that even if we take the cataract out, they're still going to be blind because the glaucoma has damaged the nerve so much. So, I mean, those are the reasons. You got to, you know, people say, oh, I'm healthy. Well, you think you are, but it's so much better to see people early on. It's not a waste of money. It's not a waste of your time. Trying to prevent these long-term, permanent, disastrous sequelae.
Definitely. And so, wrapping things up now, so as the Carroll pre-medical student is listening to this and struggling on their journey, wondering what sort of experiences they can get in the future and how they can make these relations, how they can make this connection, start fostering this provider-patient relationship with the people they see in their clinical experiences. What final words of wisdom do you have for them?
Again, people have to make their choices, number one, not based on income. That was always talked about in years past, and I presume it's still talked about now. I don't think people do it. Some people might. Don't do it. There's just no amount of income that can make, take away, that can overcome other reasons to be in a field or a specialty. It's just, you got to listen to your heart and not your wallet. That's number one.
Yeah, and I would just say, seek the clinical experiences, know that you can do this. I'm a farm kid from a small town who ended up, having a 20-year pediatric career and loving it, so it is possible. Don't think that it's not possible. It's possible. If you want to do it, but it's that, as you can hear from Tim and I, it wasn't with a lot of sacrifice. It wasn't without a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. So yeah, it's hard work. Yeah, there was a lot of sacrifice, but it's a great career. So those would be just what I tell you is it's possible. I'm here to tell you that it is, and it's a good career. It's a good career, and there are plenty of naysayer old docs. I mean, yeah, we talk about, EHR is so onerous and things like that, but, and when we were going into medicine, there were old docs saying, it's not what it used to be. There's too much involvement from hospitals. So there's always going to be naysayer older docs that's saying, medicine's changed so much, it's not worth going into. If it's something that you want to do and you have a passion for it, do it. There's always going to be naysayers around that say it's changed too much, it's not the same, but it's well worth it if that's what your passion is.
I remember there were even naysayers at Carroll. You were a freshman pre-med, and there were juniors or seniors saying, "I would drop out now. It's too hard." It's like, you're anyway. If it was so bad, why didn't you drop out today? So Char's right. Naysayers abound.
And with that, we end another episode of Carroll PMC's video interview series and wrap up another story for you guys. And I think we had an important discussion today about the intangible aspects of patient care, which is something I truly didn't respect or acknowledge until Medicine in Mexico, and until I progressed through my training and experience as an EMT. Oftentimes I jumped straight to the vital signs, jumped straight to what they told me about their sample history, and jumped straight to the impact of interventions of oxygen treatment and of IV therapy. But in Medicine in Mexico, those large impacts on the well-being of the children there, they didn't exist. What difference we had, for the most part, was very subtle. It was a smile. It was communicated by body language. And that was something I didn't focus on. And then when I brought that back to the States, now I feel like I read more from the patients that I interact with. I feel like I read more from the people and the providers I work with as well. And I think that just goes to show the impact that community service can have. It might not be in Medicine in Mexico. It might be something in your community. It might not be in person at this time. It might be a very strong phone conversation you have with somebody currently, maybe as somebody who's running a hospice or is part of a hospice program that is involved with phone conversations. And so I think highlighting the impractical, intangible effects of caring for other people just by your presence, just by your attention, and just by your voice alone can have a huge impact on another's well-being. And I think that's quite a promising thing to touch on in light of the pandemic messing up a lot of the direct patient experiences and clinical experiences that you would otherwise be engaging in currently. So never forget the impact, the intangible impact of patient care and providing another one with your attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen and or watch me today. Hopefully this helped you guys gain some motivation or insight into what it takes to be a successful pre-medical student. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your Carroll PMC officers, schedule an office hour slot with myself on Moodle, or consult with Carroll faculty of your choosing. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.